There are a couple of trends that are interesting to note as we start today's show. One is a consistent trend, a trend that has been available for years, and the other is an emerging trend. So the first trend is transparency, has to deal with transparency in the administration. Just to be clear, I don't think that the judiciary has this problem. And for the most part, the legislature, under both Democrat and Republican leadership, has not had this problem either, at least for the past several years. But over the past, since this administration, basically, right? Transparency has been a very big issue. And I mean, just the range of things, right? From the late answering or even the ignoring of Freedom of Information Act requests, the non-allowance or disallowance or whatever the word is of a person's right of inspection of public records. Um, Something as simple as ignoring questions from a reporter, which was completely unheard of before this administration. uh, the non-answering of questions, which is something that all administrations do, but the rate at which this administration does is alarming. And it calls for us to desire a much better situation by whomever the people elect to take Adeloop in January. And I'm very hopeful that both of the teams that have prevailed in the primary election will be teams that will restore transparency, at the very least to the levels that Eddie Calvo left it, but hopefully to a greater level than what Calvo left it, right? But more recently, we asked in the governor's office media chat, is the lieutenant governor of Guam off island? And it's just such a simple thing, right? Like it's also a constitutional issue because if the lieutenant governor of Guam is off island, the person who fills in whenever the governor is unable to fulfill his or her duties, there is an acting lieutenant governor. And in the order of succession, it's the speaker of the legislature. So was Speaker Frank Blas. If the lieutenant governor, Josh Monroe, is off island, Speaker Frank Blas is aware that he's the acting lieutenant governor. If the lieutenant governor is off island, what's the purpose of the trip? Where did he go? Are public funds being used? How much of public funds are being used? When did he leave? When's he coming back? Standard questions that every administration before this one has answered freely to the media because if there's nothing to hide, why not answer a question like that? So the media and all of us in the public had to find out that the lieutenant governor is off island. He's with his family in the Philippines. The federal court allowed his sister, who is the chief defendant in the largest political corruption case in the history of this island, together with her alleged co-conspirator, who is the lieutenant governor's boyfriend. Right? They're all together. Apparently, according to a picture circulated that's viral now, taken Sunday in Manila, and you can see that it's a church in Manila. And the picture shows that even the Archbishop Ryan Jimenez is with them. That raises a whole bunch of other questions, right? Like separate from what I want to talk about here, but like I would imagine that there are questions of like why is the Archbishop of Guam vacationing together with a high level public official? Like it just like I can't help but think of the Aperon days, like, but I don't know. Maybe it's really nothing. I don't know. I'm not an expert in anything like that, so I'll just leave that alone for a second, right? But just the whole issue of why can't you just tell us that the lieutenant governor is off island, right? Like, what's the big deal? And it's not like it doesn't even rise to the level of a news story, but you not saying anything and not telling us whether public funds were expended for this, how much in public funds might have been expended for this. Is security there? Like, are we paying for security detail in the Philippines? Like all of these different. Now I'm curious. Like, why are you guys not saying anything about this? Transparency has been for years and years under this administration a very big deal. Now there is a one of the things that and that's not a topic for today. This is just how I'm introducing the show and how I'm going to segue into one of the topics that I want to talk about today, and it is a an increasing or a trend, an emerging trend within a an agency that by and large is run by the folks who are allied with this administration. So it's sort of like birds of a feather, right? And it is the lack of transparency, communication, collaboration, collegiality within the Guam Department of Education under the new administration. And one of the things that, pardon me, okay, because this is my breakfast, and so I don't want it to get cold. This is what it is. It's thick rolled oats, oatmeal with a scoop of Lean Body Lucky Charms protein powder. This is not a paid promotion or anything like that. It's cereal that doesn't taste anywhere as good as cereal. So yesterday, let me take it back. Sunday night, a source came to us and was like, "Hey, you might want to check DOE because they're opening that section of the Tizen campus for Simon Sanchez High School to use, but it was never inspected." And I was like, "What? Like, why would that? Okay." But then like, even if we find out there was that there was an inspection or there was not an inspection, my next question would be, I thought we're leasing that school and the company we're leasing it from is supposed to regularly maintain the school, because part of the source information was that the school was not prepared, that there was a big mess in different places, there were leaks and all this stuff, right? And so on Monday morning, first day of school, yesterday, I asked in the GDOE chat with the media, I asked Damon Borja, the PIO, whether the buildings and the classrooms Simon Sanchez High School would be using in Tizen were inspected. Sanitary inspection, building inspection, all that stuff, right? And if they were inspected, whether they passed inspection. And I found it odd that, for as opaque as the WANPAD administration is, I found it odd that there was no response to that whatsoever. There was not even a, I will get to this question later in the day because this is the first day of school. It's very busy. Nothing. It was left unread. And then after school, sources sent photos from within this campus, clearly showing that this school was not prepared to be opened on the first day. Clearly showing that it was not a priority for the GDOE administration to ensure that Simon Sanchez High School had a campus that was prepared and ready for them by the opening of the school. Clearly, the administration, the GDOE administration's priority was a charter school over one of its own high schools. One of its own high schools that has been tread upon and forgotten and ignored and neglected by not just GDOE, but the government of Guam and politicians who've been making promises since 2013, 2014 to rebuild this school. And obviously that upset people. And when they saw the pictures, when they saw the video of the toilet, the leaking toilet and the flooded restroom, that was disgusting. The termite infested door jambs, they didn't even bother to sweep up the dust from the door jambs. Like no effort with excellence given to giving these kids a proper first day. And whether this place was even inspected by public health, we don't know. GDOE is not answering the question. What do you call it? With those steel doors with the push mechanism to open or close it, the locking mechanism where you push it, the left side, the portion that keeps the mechanism together, just hanging down. Kids in what appears to be a gym that's filled with boxes that are stacked like 10, 12 feet high are sitting around the perimeter of the gym on the ground. Not really sure what the context is, but a whole bunch of kids sitting on the ground, not on chairs, not in classrooms. There's no lunch around. And there's these boxes in the middle of this room that could fall and injure these kids. Maybe that's why they were made to sit around the perimeter. I don't know. But certainly, I'll tell you this, based on those pictures and those videos, Simon Sanchez High School was not prioritized by the GDOE administration. And I think we got to talk about that. And how I want to talk about that on the other side of the commercial break is to read you the comments that have been made by Kandit readers and viewers, because I think these comments sort of explain what it is that the Board of Education should be paying attention to. And all of this goes back to the Guam Education Board. You can't necessarily, I mean, yes, we should absolutely hold accountable the Wonpat and her administration, right? But it's the board that chose her. It's the board that continues to not do anything to hold her accountable. The other thing I want to talk about is also comes from a source. It is draft rules and regulations that will be brought up or will be deliberated upon by the GMH Board of Trustees. And the question I have is, why the hell is the GMH administration pushing new rules and regulations during a lame duck administration period? And shouldn't something as big as this wait for the new governor to come into office? And the last thing I want to talk about is a provision in, or is a finding in the recently released audited financials of the CNMI government for fiscal year 2023, which confirms what the late Governor Arnold Palacios talked about in the beginning of 2023 when he and Secretary of Finance Tracy Norita found that the Torres Administration turned off the financial management information system for its final 3 months in office, and what that could mean for the finances of the people of the Commonwealth. We will get to all of these subjects starting with that first one on the other side of the commercial break. Stick with us.
Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Guamanians are upset about images they are seeing on Kandit of conditions over at Simon Sanchez High School's temporary campus over at Teton, a campus that Judy Wampat and her team decided without telling anybody. They just sprung it on everybody at one time. It's such is the emerging trend of how things operate over at GDOE under the Wampat administration. A campus that apparently, according to the images that we're seeing, was not prepared for these kids to occupy. And it's still a question as to whether there was an inspection of this portion of the campus. And if there was an inspection, did SSHS, did GDOE pass this inspection? And we're not sure, because when we asked the question more than 24 hours ago, it hasn't been responded to by any GDOE official. So when we posted these images, understandably, Guamanians were upset, and I want to read you how upset they were. According to their comments, Teresa Garcia says, students deserve better than this. Disgusting. I agree. Frame and Lonnie Tyron say, ridiculous. Raina Buns says, man, our kids still don't have their own school, yet go to another one to share. That's breaking down, shaking my head. Tisha Sala says, sad, sad, sad. Yet the governor set aside $21 million for road repavement. Let's be real now. Take the blinders off, Guam. Let's do better for our students. How can we raise strong leaders when this is what we are raising them to accept? So heartbreaking. Joe Leonguro responded to that saying, road repairs, new hospital, but forgot about the schools. Right. One simple example of comfort cuts. Governor paid comfort cuts for grass cutting. DOC was doing the cutting the grass. Tisha Salas replied, says, it breaks my heart and reasons we leave our beautiful paradise. Our government is the mafia. Anthony Palomo says, fire Wanpat. It was her responsibility for school to be inspected before each school is to be open. Lori Kichichu says, this is just unacceptable. Our kids deserve to be in a safe and clean learning environment. This kind of filth can make the kids sick, especially if they have chronic illness like asthma. Chris Malfunction Barnett, whom she tagged, put fabot adzuda ifamagoonta. Lori Taminglo wrote again, first day of school and already have problems. Really? Dwayne Paredo says, all the taxpayers' income being used for other idiot bills, and they still just can't get a decent place for students to call a home for themselves. At least make use of the losing team's political signs and turn them into benches and tables. That will be the best thing these outgoing senators can do. Indira Takeo says, unacceptable. Dom Toretto says, the all-in effect. January can't come soon enough. P.S. The entire GDOE board needs to retire. Go enjoy your lives and let qualified, competent people shape our children's futures. Anita Mikel says, and they said the school is ready to open for Simon Sanchez students. And they're sitting with no desks at all. So sad to see this happening with the Department of Education. Students come first, and the welfare of the students, they should not have opened the school. Josh Green says, Wanpat experiment at its finest. Made decisions on her own and expected the admins of both schools to handle everything with limited time, resources, and manpower. Kevin Harding says, I see status quo hard at work here, Gov Guam. Why are our people leaving? Situations like this show how much they truly care about the future of this island. Seth Evangelista says, but SIFA is the main concern. Why not put SSHS at LBJ or Chief Brody? Kev Rita Santos Manley gave the triple bullseye. Exactly my point. Also, Dwayne Santos says. Celia Bonoff, who is an educator, says this is absolutely unacceptable. Looks like a class action lawsuit in the making. Mimi Isti says, look like not clean before the first day. Kevin Harding, wasn't that school only built in 2014? If so, it's only been just over a decade and it's falling apart this bad. It wasn't built in 2014, but it was renovated maybe in 2013 or 2014. Could have been 2012, actually. Dwayne Santos says, how awful. GDOE putting all efforts in a charter school and can't even take care of GDOE public schools. GDOE must focus on GDOE matters. LVDA Terry says, OMG, this is not good. Chow Time Wolford says, what happened to the Back to School Readiness Task Force, Nye? That is not new for the superintendent. Fire the facilities and maintenance manager and the public health inspector. May Conception says, I definitely agree. Fire them all. Unproductive, waste, and abused on their government positions. Bennett Lujan Dueñas says, Biba Taki Chiba, incompetent administrators of GDOE. GU Thrifty says, health is more important than education, in my opinion, because how are kids supposed to enjoy school and like school when they go to a school like this? Kes Trish says, looking like DOC. Songi Marijuana Guam says, a reflection of the GDOE board, the superintendent, and GDOE leadership. A total failure at every level of leadership. It is unacceptable and inexcusable. Their priorities increasingly appear aligned with charter schools rather than strengthening our public schools and serving our students. Accountability is long overdue. They all need to resign, and voters need to vote these board members out. And watch what happens next. They'll start pointing fingers and blaming everyone else. We need to question whether this is part of their plan to undermine confidence in our public schools, create the perception that they're unsafe, and ultimately push more parents toward charter schools. Gina Marie Tenorio Call asks, isn't this a Cortex school? Tom Anatok says, hope DPHSS can see this article. Andrew Assumption says, Biba Leon Guerrero, Biba Tenorio, Biba Taki Guacat, the best of the best. Marie Lou says, I went to elementary, middle school, and high school in Guam, then taught on the island. I can honestly say nothing has changed since 1980. Sad. Stop the nepotism. This is horrible. John Rosario says, man, all this looks like regular maintenance. Toilet bowl should be cleaned, doors should be fixed, and stalls should be cleaned and wiped down. That's all regular maintenance, and we couldn't even do that. That's so shameful. What have they been doing the whole summer long? See, Gene SD says, Lecce Guam leaders latzidik on rebuilding the schools and stop the empty promises on the election over 10 years and SSHS still not built. Come on, the system is failing big time. Looks like the leaders are all in it for the money and all talks, no action. Roland Guerra says their report card has F written all over it. Class dismissed. Nay Uggan says, y'all had 2.5 months to go around and check all the schools, but y'all cared about was voting. Stop saying our children's education matters when Sanchez and FB still don't have their own school. It's been how many years already? Y'all can't even get the bus schedule together. Come on, leaders of Guam. I thought our kids matter. Tanisha Pfeiffer says, wow, the government of Guam is a joke. Elsa Rages says, there seems to be no maintenance employees at GovGuam to do these repairs. It must be nice to get paid to do nothing. Reba Garrido says, when was it ever acceptable to do nothing and get paid? So many caring people on the island who can do better for our kids needing jobs, but only the party system employment is available. April Ray says, this is truly sad. Our government is failing our children who are the future of our island. Talks about fixing our schools and putting the children first is always the speech of every running governor. But once they take their seat, they forget the promises they made to the children. New schools, updated books, more teachers, more staff, safer campus, etc., etc. How many times have we heard the same song? Do better. There is always a solution to every problem. Lemoy Omar says the superintendent should give up their main office in Tietzen to the kids and use those rundown buildings for their office. See how they like it. Derek Titano says, sad. JD Obed Alipin says, SMH, another corruption generation in the making if this keeps going on. Chris Cruz says, get out and vote. It's the only way to get the ball rolling with candidates that will serve. It's nothing new. Look around. It's 2026 and we can't even master the basics. Education is always at the forefront of every campaign, but why are the schools back in the Stone Ages? It's not because of the funding. It's a corrupt managerial system. The same families are becoming more powerful. Too many people connected to the system. It will never change unless we get out and vote and new servants willing to serve. Guam will get better. It's up to the voters. Remember that you do not owe another your vote. It's their job to serve. Unless you were assisted without merit? Aha. Therein lies the problem. God bless Guam. That's my favorite out of all the comments, by the way. Asia Duval uses a bad word. I can't repeat, but she says essentially effing disgrace. Get your stuff together, Gov Guam. I hear you, sister. Hoku Kauka, I'm so sorry. I hope I'm saying that right. Kauka says, this reminds me of the 10th town hall meeting back in May 2024 when Senator Barnett delivered a sharp critique of this administration, accusing leadership of broken promises regarding the long-delayed rebuilding of Simon Sanchez High School. Where is the promise governor made to the kids during the meeting that she would rebuild Simon Sanchez? So sad. It's been more than 2 years now after the empty promise made, and still nothing happens yet. Alan Siniclis wrote in Chamorro, so I, with my Chamorro po asu, will try to read it, okay? Nigap gi estasyon 105 Paddy, na managang halom si Juan Pat gi telefon ginin Fiji, primet dia imababan I escuelas za Taigui. Gof maulik sa minus at broto Paraguidza. I know I butchered that Chamorro, but I really tried, okay? Kinichiniwen Nemen says, ay. Where are the promises? Vote for me. I'll take good care of Guam's people and their future. School, hospital, road, everything. I got this, Guam. But in the end, people of Guam, where's half of the money going? When are they going to fix a school? Hospital leaking, rooftop mold, LOL. Sorry, I'm just saying. And Charlene Ada says, our leaders don't care. I really don't think that I have to, and by the way, there's even more comments on Instagram, and the people on commenting on Instagram are far more upset in at least with the words that they're using, and there's a lot more cussing there that's going on in that comment field. But so I'm not going to read that because that it will require a whole lot of censorship. But just know that our people are 100% not happy about this, and rightfully so. And I'm glad that they are not because I want to sow discord in our community, but because the right thing to do as a community is to demand better from our government, because this is a government that we're paid. So it's just, I want you to understand, I want all of us to understand something very clearly. As a community, we have our values and our priorities, and very clearly part of our values and our priorities, actually probably near the very top of priorities. Because I understand affordability, housing, those are the things at the very top right now because of the economic situation, right? But I'm gonna assume that right underneath that is that we do something radically different than what is happening right now for public education. And maybe that's not exactly it. Maybe the priority is that kids are learning to standard, and because we're supposed to be having high standards, we do have high standards according to the standards set by the Department of Education years ago, right? But it's meeting those standards, right? So that kids are ready once they graduate from school for the world ahead, right? I have to imagine that that's such a top priority, and that when our money is used, taxpayer dollars, and GDOE eats up the most out of all of the other agencies, it's GDOE that eats up the most in local funding. I think we expect that when our tax dollars are used on education, it's in furtherance of that goal for our public schools. Consider this, my friends. The Board of Education, whom we elect to set the budget and the policies of this Guam Department of Education, they're using our money. And right now, my friends, very clearly, they're using our money not on the priorities that we have expected of them. This is all on the Board of Education. This is all, like, if the board continues to fail to hold and this emerging trend, it's look at all of these scandals that have happened in the last 8 months, 8 short months, how much we've regressed over a Guam Department of Education under a superintendent chosen by this board, and this board continues to choose to support and to not hold accountable for these scandals. This is on the Board of Education. When we come back from the other side of the commercial break, there is, I want to bring to you wait, hold on. Where am I going here? I want to bring to you a discussion on draft rules and regulations that are heading from GMH's HR department to the GMH Board of Trustees for approval. And the one question I have is, why is this being done now? We'll get to this on the other side of the commercial break. Stick with us. Welcome back to the show. It's 8:34 a.m. on Tuesday, August 11, 2026. My name is Troy Torres. This is the morning news analysis. This is the Tuesday news analysis. Thank you so much for joining, whether it's by live streaming on, we're simulcasting to our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube platforms, or if you're joining for the replay, thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Oh, by the way, I got a message last night from Lieutenant Governor candidate E.J. Calvo. And So prior to the primary election, we had attempted to interview all of the gubernatorial teams, and we had successfully scheduled all of them. But the Wednesday prior to the election, we got a call from Atacalvo saying that they were not able to make their, or asking, they asked if it was okay with us, and we said yes. If they could skip the interview that was scheduled for Wednesday, and instead, if they were to prevail in the primary election, do their interview with us after the primary election. I said, yes, of course, that's fine. And the reason they gave was just because of the heavy primary election schedule. And I get it. I've been involved in elections before. I know that the week leading up to the election is crazy. So the interviews that we conducted with the gubernatorial teams focused on two questions and two questions alone, or two topics alone: corruption and poverty. We will interview Atacalvo with those same two topics. We're just waiting for a new schedule from them, and then we'll conduct the interview, and probably on that same day and that same evening, we'll present the interview to you. Just to make things as fair as possible, we will play their interview, and then we will replay the Terlahi Paris interview, since they are now these are now the two teams in the general election season. So to ensure that both get their play during the general election season, we'll play Atacalvo interview, and then we'll play the Terlahi Paris interview probably the day later or something like that. All right. What subject? Oh, yes, that's right. GMH. So Guam Memorial Hospital, and I wasn't tracking this at all. I don't know if this was something that was in the news somewhere or something that was publicized, certainly not through a public notice that was sent through Kandit. So they have come up with personnel rules and regulations. Now, this is a very important thing. Personnel rules and regulations govern the operations of an agency. And the government of an agency like Guam Memorial Hospital is, of course, critical. And one of the reasons it should be critical to the financial management of the government of Guam and to the politics of this island is because of the number of employees that we're talking about. We're talking about anywhere from 9 to 1,200 employees at any given time, depending on the administration. That's a lot of employees. That's nearly 10% of the workforce of the government of Guam. And then there's the issue of the types of employees that there are and the type of work that goes on. We're talking about medical care here. So there's all of these different things that apply. And when you talk about rules and regulations for an agency like this, there's a lot of detail, and there is so much room for politics in something like this. Rules and regulations like these are supposed to be developed collegially. They're supposed to be developed in collaboration with the employees that they're going to affect and with stakeholders of the agency. I don't know if that was done here. I'm not sure, but I question it because I think we would have heard about it if there was something like this going on, if there was a very public process about this. And I'm wondering whether GMH was supposed to follow the AAA process, which would have called for public hearings about something like this. And the other reason I'm wondering if the AAA process is being followed here is because I'm wondering if the Board of Trustees approves these personnel rules and regulations, does that mean that the legislature has 3 months to either approve it or to let it lapse into existence according to the AAA process? But here's the chief thing I'm wondering, because I'm curious about what did HR put in this that we should be concerned about, that's hidden somewhere in the details, and it requires people to really review this, right? But what I am primarily concerned with at this moment is, why are you trying to implement these rules and regulations while you're a lame duck administration? Why is this being rushed through? What's in it for who? Because shouldn't something like this at this stage in the game, you are a lame duck administration. This is one of the most dangerous periods for the people of Guam to be in, because from now until January, whatever that first Tuesday following the first Monday, or the first Monday following the first something, I can't remember. Whenever the next inauguration is, right? Whenever the next governor takes office, between now and then in January. This is a time when the administration can do things with absolute impunity. They don't have to worry about immediate political fallout. They're not concerned about an election. They are tired. They are exhausted. They feel there's a sense of hubris. They feel that the world owes them something because they feel that they've dedicated their lives and sacrificed so much to the people of Guam that all of a sudden they're the ones who deserve to be treated with some sort of privilege and difference from everybody else. This is when things can really happen. And the fact that they're pushing something as important as rules and regulations for an agency that large during this lame duck period should alarm all of us. Because why aren't they waiting for the next governor to come into office, to have some eyes on this thing, and, if need be, put things in there that would be advantageous to their vision of the administration of the government and the administration of Guam Memorial Hospital. Trying to muscle your way, your lasting imprint onto the government when the voters clearly have said, we don't want you in our government anymore, seems pretty wrong to me. I've asked GMH Administrator Dr. Jolene again, why? Why are you guys doing this now during your lame duck period? Why not wait until the next governor comes into office? And she said that she's going to refer my questions to their public information officer, Tihu Castro, and hopefully he gets back to me about that. But this is something that we really need to keep our eyes on, these rules and regulations over at GMH, because just there's something rotten in Denmark. On the other side of the commercial break, I want to talk about Governor Ralph Torres, the audited financials of fiscal year 2023, and a particular finding in the financials that shows that in his last 3 months in office, Governor Ralph Torres had his administration turn off the Tyler Munis System, which is the system that would prevent overspending. Stick with us.
You asked, we delivered. Guam AutoSpot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off. Or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam AutoSpot, where the savings never stop.
This stuff's hitting the spot. Welcome back to the show. It is now 8:44 a.m. on Tuesday, August 11, 2026. My name is Troy Torres, and this is the Tuesday News Analysis. Yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday, Sunday night, pardon me. Sunday night, we published our look into Ernst & Young's audited financials of fiscal year 2023, just so everyone understands some context here. Fiscal year 2023 ran from October 1, 2022 through September 30, 2023. There was an interruption in that fiscal year when on January 15, I believe it was, 2023, the governors changed out. Governor Ralph Torres had lost the election in November, the runoff election in November, to Arnold Palacios. And so on January 15, the two of them switched places. Ralph Torres went out. Arnold Palacios came in to the governor's office. When Governor Palacios came in. The first thing, well, his transition committee had been looking at things, right? But they weren't able to really see how things were until they got into office. One of the things that he discovered on that first day with his Secretary of Finance, Tracy Narita, was that the Torres administration was that the Munis system was turned off. And in the days and weeks that followed, they found that the Munis system was actually turned off in the first 3 months of the fiscal year, Ralph Torres's last 3 months in office. Why this is such an important distinction is that in the first 2 months of the Palacios administration, they had found out that Ralph Torres, in the first 3 months of this fiscal year, his last 3 months in office, had expended the entirety of the governor's office budget, leaving Arnold Palacios with no budget. He had expended, to a very large degree, the budgets of other agencies, way more than the 3 months that was supposed to happen, and that there was an over expenditure of ARPA of $80 million out of the, I think it's $500 million in discretionary funds that Ralph Torres had. So, for example, if the federal government gave Ralph Torres for the CNMI people $500 million, Ralph Torres ended up obligating $580 million, spending and obligating $580 million. Very big deal. Now, the context of this is very important. The time period is very important in this discussion. Those first 3 months include a period that I had just talked about in the previous segment, which is a lame duck period. It's a very dangerous period for people of a place, of a political geographic region to be concerned about. Because whenever you have a lame duck administration where there are no boundaries anymore, as in they're not concerned about the politics, they're not concerned about the optics, but they're in control. And also, it's the holiday season. They know people are not paying attention. They're gonna go and it's gonna be politicians gone wild, right? But the other important part of that 3 months is an election period. And there was all the anecdotal evidence and the evidence that was in public view about the amount of money, public funds that were being spent by the Torres administration in the months leading up to the November election, the general election, and then the runoff election that happened 14 days later. A lot of money that was being used. And so there was always the question that Arnold Palacios had during the transition period, like, how did Ralph spend all that money? Where did all that money come from? And the answer came when he came into office, realized that there was no more funding left in all of these different areas, including his own office. Ralph Torres was like beyond 50 cent petty. He even gave away the governor's office desk. Like Arnold Palacios didn't have a desk to sit down behind when he came into the governor's office. Anyway, so the question that he had was answered when they found out that Torres turned off the Tyler Munis System. The Tyler Munis System was the new financial management information system. And one of the things that an FMIS does, so this is where everything is supposed to be done, right? In government accounting. From the input of the transaction into now the online journal, right? And everything in between that goes all the way out to either the cutting of a check or the transfer of funds through wire. An FMIS, a financial management system. So prior to FMISs, right, you had these manual internal controls. You had your government accounting standards, and you have internal controls that are dictated by policies, by law, by best practices, all this different stuff, right? Accounting principles. And prior to an FMIS, an online system, basically, whether it's a network or that's a closed network or it's on the net or whatever the case may be, prior to an FMIS, there are manual ways of monitoring whether people are abiding by these internal controls that prevent theft and corruption. And that always makes things difficult, right? This manual stuff, because then you have to rely upon the good nature of people, the ethics of the monitors, the whatever management systems you build so that there is less, what is the term I'm looking for? It starts with a C. Not collaboration, but less collusion among guilty parties, right? Or unethical parties. And FMIS has almost all of those internal controls built in, where you cannot go from one part of the transaction to another without an internal control being met. One of the things the FMIS does is prevent overspending. So if one of the internal controls is that the legislature has appropriated only $10, and that $10 needs to be divided into 4 fiscal quarters. So you cannot spend more than $2.50 in quarter 1. You can't spend more than $2.50 in quarter 2. You can't spend more, and so on, right? If you have an FMIS that's on, you're not going to be able to issue out purchase orders that would be greater than $2.50 for any given quarter. As soon as you turn off the FMIS and you start manually doing things, and on top of not having manual internal controls, you can write checks for anything. You can even take cash from another source because you've exhausted cash in that one source that you were supposed to get the obligation from, and take cash from another source like a federal funding source that you were not supposed to use, and use it for that and commingle the funds. Such was the practice during the Torres administration, especially in the last 3 months, to the point where the books are almost unauditable. The audited financials of 2023 come very close to saying that under the Torres administration, the books were unauditable. But instead, they gave a disclaimer of opinion, which is the worst type of auditor opinion that you can get, and says a whole lot about that administration and how either corrupt or incompetent or a series of both that it is. I want to show you the portion of where these findings are, okay? Let me stand by YouTube. So we find this whole thing about Tyler Munis in the audit schedule of findings. Oh, hold on. This thing got stuck. Hold on 1 second, okay? Let me switch to this and then switch to this. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Finding number 2023-001. This is the first finding. All right. Number 5 under the finding. Budget control function configuration of the Tyler Munis system that prevents expenditures from being recorded when the cumulative amount is in excess of the budgeted amount was not activated during the first 3 months of FY 2023. Some people have been like, oh, FY 2023, that's 9 months of Palacios. Yeah, you're right. That was 9 months of Palacios. That was 9 months of Palacios trying to clean up the first 3 months of Torres. And here, my friends, this is not Troy Torres saying it. This is the independent auditors, Ernst & Young, saying this. The first 3 months of FY 23, that's Ralph Torres. CNMI did not perform a combination of the following. 1, reconciliations. 2, proper cutoff procedures. 3, effective communications among departments. And 4, sufficient supervision and reviews relative to significant classes of transactions, and lacks monitoring controls to ensure the Tyler Munis system's budget control function configuration is not deactivated. Potential management override of internal controls over CNMI's budgetary policies and material errors over the financial statement may occur, resulting into a disclaimer of opinion being issued for the following accounts. Look at number 1. That's the worst one. Cash and cash equivalents, both unrestricted and restricted. This is what Ralph Torres had his hands on, with no light into that room in those last 3 months of his administration, which explains so much of why the CNMI government and economy are in the situation they are in right now. Receivables, net of allowance for uncollectible accounts. They could have, it's very possible, done away with people who owed the CNMI government because they turned off this function of the munis. Due to, from component units and interfund settlements, depreciable and non-depreciable capital assets. There's big questions as to where a whole bunch of equipment went after the Torres administration. Here's your answer as to why no one can seem to understand where that stuff is. Advances, inventories, and other assets and accounts payable. Now, I'm going to skip ahead under this very same finding number 2023-001 page, I think it's 28, and I want to show you something. Maybe it's 29. No, page 30. I'm sorry, it's finding 2023-002. This is under the schedule of federal awards. There is a project string that is known as 26072100035, and the amount for it is $26,268,355. Hold on, because there was something else. Stand by. No, that's it. Oh, yes, there. And it's under, the program expenditure is for cluster ALN 97.036, classified as subrecipient expenditures. Transactions pertain to beneficiaries in nature and or as the end users of the awards rather than for the purpose of carrying out program requirements on behalf of the CNMI. So, okay, I understood that part, right? Like, this funding was supposed to be classified as having been administered by a subrecipient. So a subrecipient is like another government agency or a nonprofit organization or a vendor that is used in order to pay this money to a final beneficiary. So for example, wait, let me go back to me. Stand by. Where is this stupid? For example, if the federal government gave me, the CNMI government, $100, and it was for the federal guidelines said that I could use it to pay for medical bills. Me, the CNMI government, I'm the governor of the CNMI, right? Like, I don't have the ability to determine who deserves any of that money for medical bills. So me, the CNMI government, I'm going to subgrant that $100 to the Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation. And Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation is going to take $1 or going to take 10 cents from that in order to pay for its ability to administer the remaining of that $100, so that $99.90. And Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation is going to be able to determine, because it has the expertise and it has the protocols, it's going to be able to determine that you get $2 and your not as sick friend gets $1.50 and somebody else gets 73 cents. So those are the final people who are getting the federal award. Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation is the subgrantee of the award. And the reason that's so important is because Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation would have to follow an entire series of controls in order to determine that the federal funds were used correctly. Now, what this audit is saying, let's go back to it, is that for cluster ALN 97.036, there was a project where $26,268,355. Hold on, this thing is not following, so let me just do that thing where I go back and forth. So for cluster ALN 97.036, there was a usage of $26 million under this project string right here, for what do you call it? $26 million that was expended outside of a subgrantor. So I looked up what is ALN 97.036, and it is a FEMA Homeland Security grant that was given to Ralph Torres at the end of his administration for use for COVID recovery. And when I looked up this project string, I saw that this was just Ralph Torres giving away $26.2 million to private sector grantees without a subgrantor in the middle administering the funds. Now, the audit doesn't go into what exactly the money was used for, but I think by this point, my friends, if you don't know already know, by a very educated assumption, what that money was used for, then, then hope might be lost. But I think that all reasonable and objective people would look at that and they will understand very clearly that this is part and parcel to the problem the people of the CNMI have had to endure because of this misspending of public funds during the Torres administration by Ralph Torres, the same guy who wants to be the governor again as more disaster recovery funds are going to come in from Sinlaku and Bavi. Such a scary thought. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. You all have a beautiful day. God bless you. And I love you all.